Back to the Tracy Take. I am Tyler here with my co-host and co-brother. Actually, does co-brother make sense, Stephen? I don't even know if co-brother makes sense. But Ryan, here's Ryan, my brother. And so, yeah, thank you for joining us tonight for another episode. Sorry for some of the delays. Not sure if you could hear in my background, but the reason why we had to miss a couple weeks because I had a little girl this past Wednesday. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I had to miss a little bit of time for all of our viewers. I hope you guys understand and will continue to watch. And so Ryan and I, we are going to get a lot into this episode. We're going to do week 1 recap, Thursday night football predictions, and also week 2 predictions as well. So if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button so you can see when we go live and post more. Like this video and share this video with your friends and family. And Ryan, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Crazy week 1, lot of games.
Oh, yeah.
Falcons blew another one, but I would have bet money on that one.
Who's surprised? Yeah.
Who is surprised by that? Yeah. But that all being said, though, a lot of like game-winning field goals, a lot of great games, and a couple of major storylines that we really want to talk about. And I think really kind of starting it off. One, and let's just go into it because it's probably the biggest storyline. Is going to be Dak Prescott and his injury with the Cowboys. Because for me, and I'm trying to remember, let me see. I had this sheet here. I think
dislocated thumb. Is that what it was?
Something like that, or maybe some torn ligaments. And I'm trying to think. So I had them as wild card 1 in my playoff bracket, and you had them not making the playoffs. Yeah, and if I could make it right now, I would have Dallas not make the playoffs. I think that is a huge blow. And one, already they didn't look good just in general. Of course, it's week 1. They did not look good in general.
That is a really tough open. That Tampa defense is very good.
It is tough. But even then, just if we're looking at even from last year to this year, like it was the same thing, except it was in Tampa. And they gave them a hell of a game. I think Tampa had to kick a last-second field goal to win the game.
Yeah, they did.
But
the talent just isn't there on the offense anymore. You could really tell, especially in the second half, that offensive line really started to struggle. Yeah. Tyler Smith definitely looked like a rookie. They really missed Amari Cooper. CeeDee Lamb was the only guy out there because Michael Gallup.
Michael Gallup's still out also. So they're really going to need him to come back.
Yeah. And so the Dak injury to me is the straw that broke the camel's back. That's and I guess it's a pretty big straw, but that really sets Dallas back 6 to 8 weeks. They realistically could start out 0-7 now.
Well, and honestly, they're playing the Bengals this week in Dallas. They're not going to win that game. Then they're at New York for next Monday night's game, and
the Giants, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the Giants. Yeah, and the Giants looked good. I mean, they went to Tennessee, and Saquon Barkley looked healthy. That Titans defense is pretty tough. I mean, that's going to be that's no gimme. Yeah. The Commanders also didn't look half bad. I mean, it's another division game. We'll have to see. The Commanders have a little bit more weapons. Then they go to LA on October 9th, and I think that is week 5, playing the Rams. I think I'm going to bet on the Rams on that one. Then they're to Philly. That's a loss. That was already probably a loss with Dak Prescott, and now they don't. Then they're hosting the Lions, and man, the Lions team, they looked solid. I mean, they hung in there with Philadelphia. Still need some work on the defense, but Cowboys do not have the firepower that Philadelphia does. And of course, this is a huge overreaction. Maybe Cooper Rush is the next Hall of Famer. And then they're playing the Bears. I mean, all teams with a lot of potential.
I would say
to be very good.
Of all teams from week 1, Cowboys' reactions are the most appropriate. I think the Cowboys in themselves are just not as good as they were. Yeah.
Well, I mean, anytime you lose your star quarterback who you signed to a big money deal, and you lose him for half the season, that's going to be that's going to be tough. Now I say half the season. Reports came out it was 6 to 8 weeks. Jerry Jones is saying it could be sooner than that. So we'll have to see. I've never had any issues with my thumb, so I don't know what that's like in difficulty throwing the ball.
I'm going to believe a doctor over Jerry Jones on this one.
Yeah. Well, and also Jerry Jones goes on the radio. He could be saying anything just to kind of keep everything calm. And so, but still outside of that, though, they just didn't look good. Like just in general. Of course, it's week 1. Packers didn't look good, but and we're going to talk about them in a second. But Cowboys just didn't look good. They just did not look good, just in general. But for me, it hurts their playoff hopes because I had them just because of how weak the NFC was.
Barely making
not a shoe in for a minimum of wild card spot with 7 teams there, but a favorable team to make the playoffs. But now, I mean, they're going to be playing a lot of teams that are going to be wild card contenders as well. Giants, Commanders, Lions, Bears, a lot of teams that are going to be spot. So it's going to be tough for them to come back from this, especially if Dak Prescott takes the 6 to 8 weeks as expected to come back.
No, that's a really tough spot, especially in a division where they need to be competitive from the get-go, because Philadelphia has a lot of firepower, and like you said, the Giants and Commanders both looked good. Also, one little tidbit that we didn't talk about pre-show: Jahan Dotson with a 2-touchdown game, looking like that 18th overall pick that he was. That was a pretty good performance for him. So that was a guy from the draft that you and I didn't like the pick, but he performed really well.
Yeah, he did perform well, and so and I think I would need to go back and look at Terry McLaurin's stats, but I think he took all of his touches away just because of how well he was playing. So that was a big that was a big game on his part.
Yeah.
So
another big injury from the week 1 was TJ Watt. The Steelers in general had a couple injuries. I know Cam Hayward and Najee Harris both left the game in the fourth quarter. But TJ Watt, torn pectoral, does not require surgery. Looks like it's also going to be a 6 to 8 week recovery time for him as well. That's a huge blow. Reigning Defensive Player of the Year, a guy that requires a lot of chips and double teams on the defensive front. Definitely the leader of that defense. So I'm really curious to see how the Steelers will react after that. The worst kicking game I think I've ever seen. So
especially the ending of that. But with TJ Watt, he looked like he deserved the Defensive Player of the Year already. In those first 3 quarters that he was playing. I mean, he looked absolutely amazing. I think on the one drive, he had 2 sacks and then a pick, I think. I mean, how many defensive ends have that, in a drive? But for me, when I look at that whole game, it gave me major concern on the Steelers and made me that much more confident in the Bengals. I know that might be a little bit of like just with the outcome of the game, but the Bengals played so bad in the first half. I mean, 5 turnovers, and they still should have won that game if it wasn't for some poor blocking from the special teams to block the kick, and then a poor snap from the 29-yard line in overtime that then sent the field goal wide. And it's my opinion of it. Evan McPherson, he could have also just pulled it as well.
Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, and they still almost won.
And that was and you had a good point. I didn't even think about it, but Joe Burrow had an appendectomy not that long ago, so him coming back, they're going to be absolutely fine, and they played pretty well. Then on the flip side, the Steelers, they really struggled to move the ball offensively. They had the interception for a touchdown on the second play of the Bengals' first drive, and then I'm trying to think who scored their next touchdown, because
I think it was Najee.
Was it Najee? Did they have the one drive? Yeah.
So Najee caught a touchdown.
It is. I mean, the Bengals, they have a good defense, but that offense is going to need to pick it up, because especially now with TJ Watt out, because TJ Watt can take over the game, especially defensively, because he requires so much attention. But with him not being in there for the next 6 weeks, maybe even a little bit longer, then the Steelers are going to have to find something to do, and I'm looking forward to talking about their next game, because they're playing against the Patriots with you. We'll get to that a little bit later.
We'll get to that here in a little bit.
But no, for me, honestly, even I think stock for me personally went up for the Bengals and went down for Pittsburgh.
I definitely want to see them get rid of the turnovers. Steelers had one of the highest turnover ratios last season, because they do have a good defense. But the fact the complete lack of offense was really concerning on the Steelers side for me. So sticking with the AFC North, I do want to touch really quickly on the Cleveland Browns versus the Carolina Panthers game. That was Baker Mayfield's revenge game, And it would have been so sweet if the refs did not blow it at the very end. Horrible officiating. Brian Burns got pulled into Jacoby Brissett by the offensive tackle, which was then called as roughing the passer. 15 yards right there. A couple plays later, Browns go to spike the ball to stop the clock. Jacoby Brissett pump fakes a spike, then takes a step, and then spikes it, which you're not allowed to do. I think the rule is you have a second.
When you spike it, it needs to be essentially one straight motion.
Yeah.
You get the ball, you throw it down, or you're spiking the ball.
Yeah, not a pump fake. That's not there. All right, spike it.
Yeah.
Should have been intentional grounding. Should have been 5 yards from the spot of the foul and a loss of down. But it goes on the Browns' record as 1-0. That was probably the officiating low light of the week.
Well, and that's one thing too. That was a game I wasn't able to watch nearly as much of that game as I would have liked, but then seeing the highlights of it, I'm just curious on what on how much of the Panthers' comeback was the Panthers actually clicking and maybe they're starting to get something, or the Browns went in prevent defense and started to open things up a lot, to create those opportunities, because the Browns got up big early on and the Panthers were able to sink back in. We'll be able to more of both those teams, because they're both fringe playoff teams, especially just considering their situations. Like the NFC is not that tough, and the Browns should be a playoff team, especially a division winning contender, but Deshaun Watson will be out for the first 11 games. So we'll have to see how Jacoby Brissett does. It stinks when the officiating impacts a game like that, because those should have been two absolute, very obvious calls that they just missed. They just absolutely blew it.
Granted, it's easier to be a ref on the couch than it is in actual game time. But to me, I feel like those are fairly obvious calls.
The intentional grounding one. Well, even then, so the issue with the spiking one is they do that all the time, where they will reconvene. Was the QB outside the tackle box? Was there someone in the vicinity? No. Okay, now we throw the flag. Why couldn't they throw the flag then?
Yeah.
Well. Sorry, and actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think they did, and they picked it up.
They did.
It should have been intentional grounding, because that's the rules. With the one that is the roughing the passer one, dude is engaged. The dude's engaged with the lineman. So
he's being held. He's literally he's being pulled by his shoulder pads. He's being held.
Would it have been
throw the flag on Brian Burns?
So, and my issue though is would it have been roughing the passer? Let's say Brian Burns just ran that left tackle into Jacoby Brissett and then they banged helmets. Would that be roughing the passer? Because obviously not. It shouldn't be. So I get what they're trying to do with the roughing the passer, but it has gotten the rules. They've gotten so nitpicky, and I think they've kind of ruined it.
There's
and even then, but they're focused so much on the helmet, and T. Higgins now has a concussion on a clear helmet-to-helmet play that they missed, but then they can't go back and challenge that. And I'm not saying you should go back and challenge penalties or missed calls like how they did with the pass interference. I disagree with that rule, but there needs to be some sort of way to double check that. If there's a ref if there's an eye in the sky.
That's what I was going to say. Have an eye in the sky or a ref in the box that can relay a call down to the head official.
Yeah.
And then you do get that TV perspective of what is going on. And then you can also really quick, if you want to see if he was held, that guy can just review the play plays last 6-8 seconds. You can go back and look to make sure.
Well, and that's where the one thing with the whole, it would need to be on set plays, like helmet to helmet, or something like that. Instead of
review every play.
Yeah, especially in holding, for example, there's holding on every single play, and sometimes they call it, sometimes they don't, and everyone lives with it. But the roughing the passer, those are, momentum killers.
So they review every play with inside of 2 minutes, right? Or they have the ability to review every play inside of 2 minutes. Why does that not apply to roughing the passer in that scenario?
Well, because that's the issue then, is because it's a penalty. They can't review penalties, but they're so like they can be so atrociously off, if that makes sense. So like the T. Higgins one, for example, cleared. I mean, dude got a concussion, blindsided hit. Like how do you miss it? You know? And so now T. Higgins is probably out this week. Then on Jacoby Brissett, something that was so clearly, obviously not. Like, dude's still engaged with the lineman, and he just has his hands up in the air, trying to block the pass, and his hand hits. Like, they all, like both linemen ran into Jacoby Brissett. So it wasn't just like it was the lineman's fault.
Yeah.
And he hit him well after the pass, or hit him helmet to helmet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what the NFL does about it, but it's definitely an issue because that was a big play on Brian Burns' part and totally got negated because of the poor referee.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. And I hate the fact that it had such a big impact. I don't want to harp too much on it.
But I will say one more change in divisions here, because I know we got a lot to get in, but wanted to touch up on the Packers as well, because we had a little differing opinions on it. I think your opinions are valid, but I think we just so I'll just say I'm not super concerned with the Packers. I'm a little bit more concerned than at this point last year, because we all remember last year the Packers got blown out by the Saints. But two things for me. One is week one, similar to like with the Bengals, for example, a little rusty, maybe not having their best game, but there's still a lot of positives you can see from it. Mm-hmm. And two, if we're comparing this game from the Saints to the Vikings, I think the Vikings are a much better team than the Saints were week one last year. So I think they've improved in the offseason, both offensively and defensively. Also, that Packers defense still is legit. They were able to keep that Vikings offense intact outside of that quick start that Justin Jefferson had. And only held them to 23 points.
24, but
24, my bad. But then I might have a different opinion after this Sunday Night Football game with the receivers, because that's the big question mark now. No Devontae Adams. If Allen Lazard comes back, that might be a little bit different. But there were clear opportunities, by the team. Christian Watson missed an easy touchdown catch. He just missed an easy one. Rookie mistake. Learn from that.
That was his big problem coming out, is he had like a 8% or 10% drop rate. So that's my biggest thing now, is they've kind of reconfigured their offensive line a little bit. Last year they had offensive linemen coming back from injury, whereas this year they don't really have that that second wave to come in, right? Like to boost the level of play. They don't really have that this year. And then you couple that with the complete inexperience at wide receiver, because you also have to think last year Aaron Rodgers had Devontae Adams, Allen Lazard, and Robert Tonyan, and now he doesn't have Devontae Adams.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
And Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And there was another one too. I think it's Equanimous St. Brown. But he wasn't a huge factor on offense.
Oh, yeah, no, he's with the Bears now, I think.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. He caught a touchdown, actually.
But to me, if you move you put Devontae Adams in there, Allen Lazard's a good 2. Robert Tonyan's a good tight end that can get you 40 catches for 500 yards, whatever. But you take Devontae Adams out, you move everybody up a spot. And that's what the Patriots have struggled with for the last 6 years, is they just don't have a number one wide receiver. And it's really hard to operate a high-level offense without a true number one wide receiver. The run game really struggled against Minnesota, who was not a great run defense team. And last year, the Packers really relied on their run game with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And I don't know if they'll have that ability this year. So for me, I'm not saying sound the alarm like I am for some of the other teams in Green Bay. I'm just saying that I really think that there is legitimate cause for concern in Green Bay this year. It's not last year where they were supposed to go to New Orleans and the game got canceled, so they all had to play in Jacksonville, and then they got blown out in August or early September humidity in North Florida. That's not That's a totally different scenario. They went into a division rival that they've played time and time again, and they got whipped in the first half. They did keep them in check in the second half, but that first half was ugly.
Yeah.
So
well, and that's where I said, and it's going back to, for me, it's still week one. And it's a good point on division rival. They should have known a little bit more, but also at the same time, the division rival knows a lot about the Packers as well.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, but it'll be definitely an interesting development to see, kind of as the season progresses. I will say I got that game right. I did pick the Vikings in our pick in our season-long competition, and so what was the overall rankings again?
You were 10-5-1.
Yep.
And I was 8-7-1.
Yep. So
I'll take above 500 in that, to be fair.
Yeah, above 500 is not bad.
You had a pretty good week. So
yeah. So this week, we'll get into a majority of the games here in a second, but we'll start now with the Thursday night football. But this similar trend, we both had the same team winning on Thursday night, just as we have a lot of the same teams winning on most of the games. There's only a couple games that we disagree on. But Thursday night football this week, Los Angeles Chargers are at Arrowhead Stadium playing against the Kansas City Chiefs. And not going to lie to you, honestly, the Chiefs totally changed my mind on
I
their
was
performance.
blown away.
Of course, I think a lot of people were more hype on the Cardinals than they should have been. I'm trying to even think.
DeAndre Hopkins is serving a 6-game suspension, so that is a little –
but not even just that, though. They, as a team, looked awful. Like, they could not stop Kansas City. And props to Kansas City. They played really well. Patrick Mahomes looks awesome. Looking like we're heading towards another fun AFC championship game between the Bills and the Chiefs.
They'll probably be in Buffalo this year, if I had to guess.
Probably in Buffalo. But, yeah, for me, the Chiefs, if they have that firepower, there's not going to be even the Chargers team who has a great secondary, great pass game with Joey Bosa leading the way. Asante Samuel Jr. as one of their star cornerbacks there.
Yeah,
and even
signed.
J.C. Jackson, they just signed. Khalil Mack's also there as well. I don't know. It's going to be a great game, but similar now. I know the Chargers beat the Chiefs last year in Kansas City, the beginning of the year, but I feel like this Chiefs team's different at this point of the year. They look ready. They look ready to go.
Yeah.
And they were not last year. And the Chargers, they're going to be missing their number one wide receiver, which is going to be a big loss. Yep.
That was my big decision maker when making this pick to go with Kansas City. Was just the fact that Justin Herbert's not going to have Keenan Allen this week. I know they still have Josh Palmer and
Mike Williams.
Mike Williams, that's the other name. As well as Jared Cook is still there as their tight end. And so they do still have really good weapons, and I'm a huge fan of Justin Herbert. I just think Kansas City is going to have too much. Patrick Mahomes right now, after watching him in week one, is playing – he is playing the most precise football I've seen since, like, peak Brady.
Yeah.
And the scariest thing about that is he's doing that on the run. He had a pass to Travis Kelce in triple coverage that was just absolutely insane. It literally went about 4 inches away from the outstretched linebacker's hands, hit Kelce perfectly in stride, and then Kelce ran for another like 6 or 8 yards. That is indefensible.
Oh, yeah.
You can't stop that.
Well, and how long have they been playing together now? Is it 4 years, 5 years?
Patrick Mahomes has been in the league for 6 years now, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean,
he's been there the whole time. Kelsey's been in Kansas City the whole time.
That's just a connection that you can't beat. I mean, and then especially Eric Bieniemy, I think he's the offensive coordinator. Hasn't he been the only offensive coordinator that Mahomes has been under as well?
If so, it's been one of two. Like, if not, it's only been
one other. And I think that's a huge thing that a lot of people don't realize when it comes to quarterback success and also just offense success. But consistently being in the same system for a long time, the coordinators that stay put. Like, for example, your Patriots team and with Josh McDaniels that was there for such a long time.
Yeah.
Huge benefit to the team. So that's year over year, same playbook, same lingo. If you're making little adjustments, you're adding on to something you already know. And they've done a great job at like revamping that offense, especially that receiving core, and they looked solid. They looked very well rounded,
and they utilized a lot of their receivers in a really good way, in a way that they can all succeed. They weren't running Mecole Hardman on like digs over the middle, like just to get him destroyed by a linebacker. He was running kind of take the top off routes.
Yeah.
They did a really good job. Sky Moore did a lot of the slot underneath stuff. And that's another rookie wide receiver. We talked about Jahan Dotson earlier. Sky Moore is another rookie wide receiver who I'm really high on. He looks incredible.
Yeah.
So,
and then on top of that, then you have, obviously Travis Kelce that you met, veteran receivers and Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. But then you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of the backfield, who's a great catcher, a great pass catcher out of the backfield.
Yeah.
And so now, I mean, so as you said, now you have all levels. Like you have all levels that you have to cover now. There's not like a specialty. So how do these teams address that every single possession? Every single play. So I mean, they looked really good. Cardinals did not look good. But
I don't think Cardinals make the playoffs.
No, I don't think the Cardinals make the playoffs. You have the Cardinals making the playoffs, and I do not.
But if I could change one team from the NFC, it would probably be the Cardinals.
Yeah. But we'll talk about them, I'm sure, at a later time. But yeah, for me, what does Los Angeles? I mean, because I feel like we talk so highly about Kansas City, and of course, it's funny we're talking about Week 1 overreactions. Maybe we're overreacting with Kansas City and how much we're just just kissing their ass, the entire
maybe
time.
A little.
But the Chargers, for me, I think it's early on in the season. They seem like they struggled to run the ball a little bit against the Raiders, who do have a good run defense, but the Chargers should have been able to be more effective in the run game. And with them not having Keenan Allen, I just think that it just leans towards Kansas City. I just think everything leans towards Kansas City.
It's not impossible by any means.
Oh, by no means, no. If the Chargers go in and beat Kansas City, I wouldn't be surprised. If they blew them out, I would be surprised. But if they go in there and beat them, I wouldn't be surprised. I just think Kansas City, they look really stinking good.
Yeah. For me, for Los Angeles to go in there, they have to go and get a lead early. They have to hope Kansas City starts a little slower, get a lead, and then Kansas City has to throw into their defense. And even then, it's like, all right, Kansas City can put up 14 points in 5 minutes. So I really think that the Chargers have to go in there, get a lead, play aggressive, and get on the front foot. Because if they get behind, that plays even more into Kansas City's hands. Because then Kansas City can do that dink and dunk all the way down. They have a pretty good defense too this year. I was really impressed with their defense on Sunday as well. They played really well. Definitely kind of an off coverage with a heavier blitz scheme. But they're just waiting for you to make a mistake. That's all it is. So So
and the Cardinals provided plenty of that.
They provided plenty of mistakes. So
but for that, the Thursday Night Football, and then I'm trying to think here with the rest of the games. Only ones now we differ on. Carolina, New York Giants. I have the Giants. I watched, living in Nashville, I watched that entire game against Tennessee. Giants look good. Tennessee was struggling there a little bit. In New York.
Is it in New York or at Carolina?
It's in New York.
Oh, it's in New York. Okay.
Yeah, it's in New York. So not saying that Carolina, that'd be another one. I wouldn't be surprised if Carolina went in there and won, but I don't know. Saquon Barkley looked really good. Brian Dabble, coaching wise, the team looks ready. They kept Derrick Henry in that offense in check, and they were able to find ways to score, even with that very solid Tennessee pass rush.
Yeah. So my big thing here is the wide receivers, and then Christian McCaffrey catching out of the backfield. DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson are better than pretty much all of the wide receivers on Tennessee. And New York's secondary is not very good.
Yeah.
So that for me is like the big X factor. And I think the Carolina defense is good enough to limit the Giants offense. They won't be able to really like shut them down completely, but they'll be able to limit a lot of what they can do, I think, because last year, especially in the first like 6 weeks, Carolina had a top 5 defense in the league, but it was because that their run defense was so good. They made offenses so one-dimensional. And so I really like kind of what Carolina matches up with the Giants.
That's fair. Yeah, so, and that'd be a good one.
Yeah.
So they, for me, I was looking at because Saquon Barkley against the Tennessee front right there. The Tennessee defense isn't horrible. Put up, I think, over 160 rushing yards or something like that. Like he had a very explosive game. Like that offense seemed to kind of hold its own. At certain points in the game. Now, of course, there were some cracks, yes, but I think that would be a low scoring game. But
Harold Landry not playing too, that hurts a lot. Not that he was the greatest run defender, but he was a pretty good edge setter.
So. He was someone that you had to definitely look out for.
Yeah.
Next game that we disagree on is Miami versus Baltimore. I'm high on the Dolphins, man. They look good. Obviously, they beat your Patriots. They were not Patriots team's not looking very good, but even then, they beat them last year. And the Miami team beat Baltimore last year pretty handedly, and Miami got better. Like Miami got significantly better.
Yeah.
And I think I like their coach I think it's Mike McDaniel.
Mike.
Yeah, very offensive minded, and I have questions about Baltimore as well. You talk one dimensional. They seem like they can really only run the ball. Lamar Jackson, they feel like they don't really have the receiver threats, or the ones that they do, they're very few and far between with very little depth. While Miami actually has some weapons, and they can come at you in a lot of different ways. And also that defense is good in Miami. They're very good.
They're not as good as they were last year, and that's my thing. New England.
Who did they lose?
Brian Flores is who they lost. So that defense was really aggressive last year, and they didn't have that same like mentality to me in week 1. And I think Lamar Jackson and the Ravens are going to be able to run pretty handedly on the Dolphins. Because the Patriots have not been able to run all offseason. 2 training camp practices, 2 team training camp practices. I forget the name of it. But in the Patriots never once had a play over like 6 yards running the football.
Really?
No, I'm not kidding.
Well, and that was their whole shtick last year.
Yeah,
was that like they could run all over everyone.
Yeah, and the Patriots they were able to run against the Dolphins fairly easily. Actually, I think they averaged almost 5 yards a carry. But the Dolphins, to me, they just don't have that same impact on the defensive side of the football. And then Tua limits that offense. He can make short and intermediate throws, but he doesn't make the right reads. That game against New England could have been so much worse if Tua made a couple reads to Tyreek Hill.
Oh, really?
It could have been. There were a couple times Tyreek Hill ran crossers and just completely outran the DB, and Tua checked it down before Tyreek Hill was able to get open. He checked it down with no pressure on him. And so that for me is, I just don't have faith in the Dolphins to go out there, be aggressive enough on defense like they were last year, and be able to move the ball well enough on offense. Because really, the Patriots only allowed them 13 points. And I don't think the Patriots defense is all that great. So
now your Patriots team's going to struggle this year.
They are. I do have them. That is, I think, the next game that we differ on, right?
Ironically, in which you picked them to win.
I picked them to win because they have to. If New England goes,
that's a horrible reason why you picked them to win. Everyone has to win every game.
No. There's a reasoning. If New England goes out and loses this game, they're not going to make the playoffs this year. New England and Pittsburgh are in very similar situations. They're both going to be fringe playoff teams, in my opinion. And if New England goes and loses this game, they're now 0-2 start with Baltimore coming to town. And Bill Belichick has never beat Baltimore. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Bill Belichick has struggled very much against a Lamar Jackson-led offense, and he's never beat Lamar Jackson in normal conditions. He beat him one time in a monsoon, but that was just because he put 9 guys in the box, and then that was it. That was all that could be done. So you're looking at 0-3 with a trip to Lambeau after that.
Yeah.
Which is also a really tough place to play. So for me, you have to win this game. This is a must-win for the New England Patriots. They have to go into Pittsburgh and win.
Yeah.
They got extremely lucky with Najee Harris and TJ Watt getting hurt. Najee Harris might play, but he has a Liz Frank sprain in his foot. So
Najee Harris should play, even though with TJ Watt, that Steelers defense still is pretty solid.
It is, yeah.
And so the reason why I'm going with Pittsburgh is they do still have some offensive weapons, and they struggled against one of the best defensive lines in the league in Cincinnati, and they struggle with them, and that's to kind of be expected. They will not be facing the best defense in the league against New England. The defense is not good. Have you guys really addressed the secondary position? I'm trying to remember. You guys don't really, because that was your guys' big bugaboo last year, was the secondary was atrocious. And the front seven wasn't really that great either.
The front seven is much better, and we're much faster than we were last year. The secondary, we probably have the best safety group in the league. But at corner, we're pretty inexperienced. We're also pretty small. So if one wide receiver is really going to burn us, to me, it's going to be Chase Claypool.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what I think too. Because I mean, so you have so Najee Harris. Let's say he plays.
George Pickens could really hurt us too.
Well, that's what I was gonna. So you have Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, George Pickens. Those are receivers 1 through 3. Then you get Pat Freiermuth, guy, a big red zone threat.
Yeah. I'm not as worried about him because we have such a good safety group, especially cover safety.
Yeah, but still, I mean that red zone though. I mean, what Pat Freiermuth's still 6'6", or something like that.
Yeah.
So Steelers have a lot more weapons, and yes, they lost TJ Watt. If they had TJ Watt, I think this would almost actually be.
Oh, if they had TJ Watt,
heavily favored. Yeah. But since they don't have him,
actually, man, I might change my pick.
No, you can't now. We're talking about it live. You got to stick with New England.
No, I could change it. The game hasn't happened yet.
Wow. Well, then why are we talking about it now?
Well, because
I'm just kidding. So we will let everyone know.
Now that I think about it,
we will let everyone know.
Yeah. Okay. The Patriots' offensive line, it was not good against the Dolphins. The Steelers have a better defensive line than the Dolphins, and Brian Flores is the defensive coordinator. Who, might I mention, I think the Patriots averaged 12.5 points against when he was the Dolphins head coach. And that was with less talent.
Yeah.
So I'm changing my pick to Pittsburgh actually on that one. Yeah. I just convinced myself that New England.
I convinced. I convinced you. Your brother convinced you.
Yeah. I'm changing to Pittsburgh.
Watch, New England is going to win now.
If they do, then great. I just don't think it. I don't think that'll happen now because it just hit me about the Brian Flores debacle.
Yeah, and I will say every other game we have selected the same except for Sunday Night Football. But is there any before we get to that one, our last one? And I figured that would be the last one that we'll talk about here. But are there any games that pop out to you that
Seattle, San Francisco?
That's a good one. Yeah, because especially Seattle kind of with the upset win. They looked good, but
they looked.
But one thing I noticed that second half they really struggled to move the ball. Like I was
going to say, they looked good and bad all at the same time.
Yeah.
The thing that I liked about the second half was they didn't play well, but they didn't make mistakes. They didn't make any major mistakes. I don't think they threw any interceptions or had any fun.
I mean, they got lucky in my opinion. Like that, they shouldn't have won that game. I mean,
no, yeah.
I think Joe Buck said the last time there were 2 fumbles inside the 5-yard line, like by one team at the 1. like was like 1987. Like so, they honestly should have been a blowout. The fact that it was so, and even then, Denver went for it. I think on 4th down, and like they went to the red zone 4 times, and throughout the whole game, and left with 3 points. Like, that's horrible. Like, that's absolutely horrible. You need to be able to protect the ball, get your points when you can. I understand they're talking about statistics, but even on like the 4th and 1, I just don't get why do you snap the ball 3-4 yards back, hand it off to a guy, and then have him bounce around?
Why not just get Russell Wilson in there?
Shoot, man, if everyone's gonna fucking know, sorry for swearing, if everyone's gonna know that you're gonna try and run the ball, literally what you do is you get the biggest guy on your team, teach him how to snap the ball, then get the 2nd and 3rd biggest guy on your team and have him stand right behind you and just move that offensive line. Just move them, snap the ball, and then move it. You can get a yard. Like I think you can get a yard there.
Yeah,
just have him falling forward.
You don't even have to do that. You just place the ball, get the defense a little off guard, because all you need is an inch on that off the snap, and once you get an inch, you can take a yard.
Yeah,
like easy.
They had some huge missed opportunities. Denver did, but Seattle, they looked good, and they're actually leading the division right now. It's only 1 game.
Yeah.
But
everybody else lost.
I'm leaning towards San Francisco.
I am too.
I do want to see how Trey Lance does, and they will be at home. They'll be without Elijah Mitchell, but I don't think that's going to be that big of an issue because they lost a lot of running backs last year, and it was next guy up, and they had no issues running the ball. But
for me, Trey Lance is the big X factor. He did not look good against Chicago. Granted, that's a hard game to look good in that weather.
Yeah, did you see them slipping and sliding? It looked awesome. It looked super fun. But yeah, I think it's going to be tough, just in general, to kind of pick against San Francisco because Seattle's been so awful for so long.
Yeah,
now just because they won 1 game in week 1 doesn't mean to me that they're going to go in and
everything about the win points to fluke. Like, everything about it.
Yeah. So the 2 turnovers on the goal line, the interesting time management at the very end of the game
by the Broncos.
And they didn't put up any points in the second half at all.
No, they didn't.
Actually, I think I want to go back, but the Broncos had the ball for so long that half. Like their first drive was over half the. Then it was a couple plays, and then they fumbled again, and then the Broncos had it all the way, and then fumbled on the 1 yard line. I think at the end of the 3rd quarter or something like that. Again, and then I think they only had like 3 and outs of punts. Like it really was. Seattle didn't really do much offensively in the second half. Not much. Didn't do anything offensively in the second half.
No, they did nothing at all. And that for me, I think they came out and they might have surprised Denver a little. And I think that it was their points were the result of that. Because when Denver was able to figure it out, they stopped it pretty easily. Yeah. So let's cover this Sunday night game really quick. So Green Bay hosting the Chicago Bears. You have Green Bay. I have Chicago. Oh, there's little Sutton.
Yeah, do you guys hear Sutton? She says hello.
Making her podcast debut.
Yep.
So for me, I have legitimate concerns about this wide receiver group. I have legitimate concerns about this offense in general for Green Bay. And Chicago looked fantastic against San Francisco.
Yeah.
And isn't what's his name? I can picture his face. The head coach for Green Bay, LaFleur.
Matt LaFleur. Yeah,
he's a product of a Shanahan system. They already have experience stopping it really well from last week, and then they're going to apply it to a young and inexperienced offensive group, And I get Aaron Rodgers is leading that group, but at a certain point, Aaron Rodgers can only do so much.
Well, so the one thing though is but we just talked about it's hard to judge Trey Lance based off last week's game because of the weather, and so it could be then kind of the same way it's hard to judge Chicago based off the weather. Yeah, they won the game, but that Kyle Shanahan offense, as you mentioned, was extremely hindered because of the weather. They could only do so much. Deebo Samuel and them could only do so much.
Yeah.
It was in Chicago. Weather should expect to be better. I just think you still the Bears to me have to prove that they can beat the Packers, even if the Packers are a totally different team from last year. If that makes sense. So that's why I'm still Aaron Rodgers on Sunday night. This reminds me a lot of the Packers had the same schedule last year. Horrible first game, then played a division rival Sunday night. Now, of course, it was the Lions. It wasn't the Bears. But I do think that it is going to be I think the Packers will pull this one out. I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be close. But I think they'll pull it out 28-21 or something like that. I think they'll figure out some of that stuff. I think Christian Watson gets a touchdown. One of the nice things, if they can get into rhythm with their receivers, where Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon really excel, are in the check down passes. Because they're both very good at catching the ball out of the backfield. So I think they have a week of work of working on it. It's just 1 week for the Packers, and I still think that they're the superior team.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know why I'm just leaning towards the Bears on this.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
I liked what I saw from the offense. I think they looked pretty well. They played pretty well. And Justin Fields is really starting to look the part. And granted, it was in a monsoon, so that's a little bit different. But I think that team is really rallying behind him. And so I like that matchup.
Oh, yeah. Fields has grown a lot, and so it's nothing against Fields. But that's where you're just going. They're still young. He's a sophomore. And Rodgers is extremely experienced. So I'm not. That's for sure. I'm not too concerned with the Packers. Let's talk about it after Sunday Night Football, and let's see. Then I will see how concerned I am about the Packers. Because if they have another dud receiving performance, then maybe there's some cause for concern. Because
that is one thing with the Bears too. I think the Bears are definitely outmatched on the wide receiver to Green Bay's corners matchup.
That's nothing. That Packers defense is really good. I think it's very underrated. Aaron Rodgers and how good that offense is. That Packers defense is really good.
So that is another one that I think there is a clear path to victory for the Packers. I just really like the Bears in it. I think Justin Fields, this might be his coming out party for the NFL. So
I'd love to see it.
So yeah. Any other games you think are close? I'm really looking forward to the second Monday Night Football.
Yeah, that's one. So we both have Philadelphia winning that game. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to that game because, I mean, Philly just looks good. I mean, they were looking really good last year. A.J. Brown had, 1,000 yards receiving in the last game against the Lions. Not good for my dynasty fantasy league team because I have Devontae Smith, who I didn't think had a target, or maybe he had one or two, but I digress.
Yeah.
But
maybe I'll get more this week.
Yeah, maybe we'll get a little bit more this week. But because now you do have A.J. Brown, who is a legit number one receiver. He proved that in Tennessee. And you add him, and then now you add him to a team who was a dominant running team, number one running team last year. Now, and he was coming from the Titans, who were a dominant running team, but they were a run-first team. I think Philadelphia has the opportunity to be like a 50-50. Like, I can line up under center, and you have no idea if we're doing play action, we're going to do a draw, going to just run it right up the gut at you. I really think Philadelphia is very versatile, and that defense is really good too. And so that's why I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. But I think Justin Jefferson is going to get a touchdown. I think A.J. Brown is going to get a touchdown. But I think at the end of the day, the balance of Philadelphia's offense, I think, is going to be too much for Minnesota.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's also at Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a really tough place to play.
Yeah.
They're the only NFL stadium that has a jail attached to the stadium. So
yeah,
that's how rough and rowdy they get up there.
Yeah, all those people that hate Santa Claus, like
yeah, exactly.
Snowballs.
So I definitely think it's a really interesting matchup, and Minnesota can come out and do what they did to the Packers. I don't think the Philadelphia defense is as good as the Packers. I think Justin Jefferson could have a really good game.
He could.
I think it's good. That Philadelphia defense is good, especially that front seven. I think is really good.
Don't they have who? Why was Darius Slay coming to mind? Is
he's with the Eagles? He's with the Eagles.
Yeah, I thought he was a solid corner. Is he not?
He is. He's just. I think he's getting on the latter side of his career.
Okay.
So,
but one thing about that though is even how good the Packers defense is. Justin Jefferson still had a game. 9 catches, 183 yards, 2 touchdowns. So it doesn't matter what defense it's going to be. You're going to have to watch him. He's turned into one of the better receivers in the league for sure. And I mean, he's
ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. He's getting to that point in his career where if he doesn't score a touchdown in a game, like what were his stats like? Did he hit 200 yards and no touchdowns?
Yeah.
Like, okay,
exactly.
that's still
how many times did he get tackled at the one? Like
absolutely, yeah. Did he not get in? Then Dalvin Cook had a bunch of touchdowns. So, but we'll see. That one could be a big one. That one's going to have a lot of playoff implications as well because I think Minnesota has a legit shot for a wild card spot and potentially even the division. I mean, they're leading the division right now. If let's say they pull this one out and the Bears beat the Packers, their main threat is going to be the Packers. I don't think the Bears or the Lions are going to be able to win the division this year. So
no. That division is really interesting because the Lions played really well. I really like the direction the Bears are going in. So,
well, we're going to see it here soon. And a lot of franchises have this ebb and flow, and you're seeing it now with the Patriots, where they were good for so long with Tom Brady, and all the other teams sucked. But then now they finally figured out a formula. Now Tom Brady's gone. Now the Patriots suck, but then the other 3 teams are getting pretty
Jets
good.
They're at the bottom of that, and they're about to come up.
Yeah, they're about to come up. But Miami's on the up and up. Bills have been on the up and up. Bills are one of the best.
It's hard for me to imagine the Bills getting much better than they are right now. You have a top
if they beat the Chiefs,
quarterback, a top 3 wide receiver.
If they beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, that's the only way. That is what will solidify it. I think they've lost to the Chiefs in the past 2 playoffs. That's the team. That's the team that they're struggling against.
I have a lot of serious concerns about the Patriots. I actually have a hot take that I think Belichick might be on the hot seat with his job. If not, no. I'm actually being serious. Maybe not
that
this
is
year.
A hot take. That is a very
maybe not,
hot
maybe
take.
Not this year, but next year. If the Patriots, I'm being serious. If the Patriots, they got really lucky last year.
Sutton completely disagrees with that take.
No.
You think they would fire? You think Robert Kraft would fire?
I don't think he'll fire
best coach in NFL history, or one of the NFL history, because they didn't make the playoffs a couple years in a row. After they just won 6 Super Bowls.
Have you listened to his press conferences?
What, Bill Belichick?
No, Robert Kraft's.
No, I haven't listened to Robert Kraft's press conferences.
Okay, so Robert Kraft has openly said that he wants better from this team and that he wants to do something different. For the past 3 years. And he's come out and said the lack of talent is completely because of poor drafting. And he has been very open about wanting change in New England. And so also too, you think about it, Brady's last year, the team was not good. They went 10-6. Should have gone 11-5, but that's a different story. But the team lost first round playoffs. We haven't won a playoff game, and we're not going to win a playoff game this year. But it will be four complete seasons, 2 of which will be with a below 500 record. And I think this season will be worse. I don't think he'll get fired at the end of this year. But if they go and get a top 10 pick this year and then are picking in the top 10 again next year, then I'm like, okay, there might be some validity to a coaching change.
Well, I think Bill Belichick would resign, but would retire before. I mean, so maybe we could go into the route of like, was he forcibly retired, etc. But
that's what I think would eventually. I don't think Kraft would be like, all right, Bill, get out. Like, I think it'd be like, hey, Bill, it might be time that you hang up the headset. Like, I think that would be the conversation, not
it's just funny to hear you say that, and me being a Falcons fan. Like, I hope to God one day this podcast gets big enough where we have 500, 1,000 viewers, and then people like when you
187 is in here. I'm curious to hear his take.
But then you have like when you go on these Patriots rants, then there's just be a bunch of people, Lions fans, Falcons fans, and all they do is just comment a violin. And it's just this sad violin of you complaining about how awful the franchise is. And we're like, oh, gee, bless your heart. Oh.
I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just saying at a certain point, like, where is the line in the sand for Bill? Like, how bad are you going to let him be?
I mean, he built it up before, right? And then you guys got 18 great years out of it. Or 16 great years out of it. Like, so it's like these things come and go. And
Belichick's motto himself is he'd rather move on from a player a year too early rather than a year too late. And so I'm like, why does that not apply to coaches? And honestly, it's like, have we already passed that point? He hasn't drafted excluding Mac Jones, who was a fourth alternate for the Pro Bowl last year. He has not drafted a Pro Bowler that was not a special teamer since 2011. That's 11 years ago.
One thing with that, though, if you go and look at the amount of coaches that have been churned, how many coaches have been fired from when Belichick started at the Patriots to now? How many coaches have been fired?
In the division, it's like 14.
I know. So that's what I'm saying. It is so much harder to go and find a Belichick than it is to go and let's say you draft a safety or a receiver. You guys have drafted plenty of receivers. N'Keal Harry, and you guys just traded him too, right? So this is a perfect example.
Okay, hold on.
No. But I'm saying, but you 1 or 2 years and like he doesn't pan out. Okay, there's going to be plenty of other receivers that you can go and look at and try. There's no other Belichick. Like, I can't believe you're making me defend Belichick right now.
I'm not.
Like, there's no other Belichick. There have been so many horrible. There's Urban Meyer. Like there'd be a team where Urban Meyer would come in and like maybe this guy would work out, and it clearly wouldn't.
Okay, but if not at the end of this season or the end of next season, if Belichick has 4 out of his last 6 seasons are below 500, is that not a sign that it might be time to move on?
Okay, but I mean, you can mix it all up though. And put statistics the way it is. Fine, 4 of his last 6 seasons were under 500.
Get a glass and drink some tears.
Yeah. How has he done? All right, fine. Let's expand it out. I mean, let's have some more statistics. What is his 500 record over under in the past? I don't know, 20 seasons. Like, that's what I'm saying. And it's like, in a short time period, you suck. Like you guys are not doing very well right now. But you guys, it's just a transitional period. He is the coach you guys want and need until he wants to not coach. Yeah.
All I'm saying is, over the last 4 seasons, the Patriots have been on a continuous downswing. They got really lucky last year. They lost to 3 fringe playoff teams and then made the playoffs over those teams. Mm-hmm. That doesn't usually happen.
Oh, I know. Yeah, but this is the ebb and flow of it. I think Belichick has proven himself that he is the guy.
Yeah.
I think he has more than proven himself that he is there for a long time.
I somewhat disagree. I think if we get to the end of 2023 and the Patriots are not in contention for the playoffs and they're picking in the top 10 for the second year in a row, I think there's a legitimate discussion that Belichick is no longer the coach, or it loses his GM duties and somebody else takes over that aspect of it, because it won't be like it. I'm being serious. I don't think it's that outrageous. If you have any other coach that you let him coach for 6 years and he goes below 500 for 4 out of the 6 years. You going to keep that coach?
Okay, but the thing is, did that coach though win 6 Super Bowls before that? Go to 9 Super Bowls in a span of 18 years? Like that same coach. I mean, I know the game changes, a lot of things have changed, but you guys, I mean, is it the coach's fault that the best quarterback ever to play the game now has switched teams and doesn't want to play for that team anymore? I mean, so that is going to be
because he's the GM and refused to re-sign him.
But would you want to re-sign Tom Brady for how expensive he was, knowing that there was going to be a lot of other things changing, and there's this young quarterback? Like, if you want to have a long-term success, over like I'm just saying, like those are things that he would be looking at there.
I would have rather signed Tom Brady for the remainder of his career than drafted Mac Jones. Yes, 100%.
Okay,
especially after watching Mac Jones in Week 1, that was horrendous.
Yeah.
So that for me is my hot take for the next 2 years. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
I will gladly say like that I'm wrong. He has to be fired though. Like he has to fire or resign, and saying he's still going to go and look for a job, like not retire.
Well, but I don't think he will get fired. I think Kraft will be like, I think it's time you hang up the headset type of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I think is going to happen. Because he's 72 or 73 now.
But do you think Belichick is going to say, like, oh, okay, all right, Bob, you want to go get a massage together? Like, no. Like, I don't think Belichick's just going to, like, listen to him and say, hang it up. If he thinks he still has some stuff.
It's kind of.
Well, I know. So then he would make him fire him.
Yeah. I mean,
and then every team that sucks is going to go and fire their coach and try and get Bill Belichick to join their team.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another thing to put in perspective. Without Tom Brady, Belichick has a below 500 record.
Well, without Tom Brady?
Actually, I think it's exactly 500.
Well, what's the point you're trying to prove there?
So you can say Belichick took him to 6 Super Bowls. Especially the last 2, he had the ultimate eraser. Belichick was able to do almost whatever he wanted on the roster, and Brady was able to make up for it. Now he doesn't have that, and I think he doesn't have that, and I think the game has changed away from his style of play, and I think he's starting to struggle.
But this goes though to the GM part though, where you're talking about is Belichick had to build those teams. He had to find those pieces, right? And sometime when you find those pieces, they don't work. It worked for them for a decade and a half, So he made the right calls, and guys stayed healthy, and guys also rose to the occasion during that. But yeah, I think if a team goes from, when Tom Brady leaves the Buccaneers, who's their coach? Todd Bowles, his record is going to go down significantly, I would think.
I understand that, but it's just if it continues for another 2 years, I think there is a legitimate cause for concern of like, when do we move on?
Well, and that's right. Like to be like, what's going on? What are some of the things that need to happen for us to get to ending team? But I still would want Bill Belichick making those decisions, I would think.
Yeah.
And everyone makes bad decisions. Sometimes players get hurt. Sometimes players don't pan out. You draft a player that might not pan out, gets hurt, or maybe it wasn't the right call. But and you did have the stat. I remember you talked about this last year, but when was the last time they drafted a Pro Bowl player or something like that?
A Pro Bowl player that was not a special teamer, and excluding Mac Jones, because he was a 4th alternate for the Pro Bowl last year, was 2011.
Okay.
So that's been 11 years. Yeah. And granted, I guess the 2022 class hasn't really had a chance. But like nobody from the 2019 class is still on the roster. 4 or 5 of the 2020 draft class is off the roster. 2 of which I think are about to be cut. Like probably next year or the year after. 2013 through 17, none of those players are still on the roster.
Yeah.
So like you have basically a 10-year gap.
But my one thing with that, how common is that? Because I would need to go back and look at the Falcons picks, but I feel like that's kind of. I mean, there's high turnover in the NFL at all positions. I mean, there's undrafted guys. Yeah. There are guys who don't get drafted, but then the team signs them on cheap. Practice squad does really well, ends up playing. Especially, I mean, you can find that in linebacker positions. You can find, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Luke Kuechly, for example? Wasn't he undrafted, or was he a late round pick?
Oh no, yeah, I think Luke Kuechly was like a first round pick.
Was he?
Yeah.
Is that just a super dumb take on my part?
I thought Luke Kuechly was a very highly drafted.
Oh, yeah, 9th overall. Okay, never mind. I ignore that. Anyways, yeah, so you have guys like Luke Kuechly who are drafted 9th overall and pan out. And then you have guys like Vic Beasley who was drafted 8th overall by the Falcons who then don't pan out. So I'm just saying that, and it's a fair point to bring up the Pro Bowls, like how many Pro Bowlers have you drafted? But then to see how many guys are still like just go pick another team, the Falcons, like how many guys are still on the team. How many guys? I was thinking about that today and talking about the Super Bowl. I mean, and I was thinking about today. I think only Jake Matthews, a left tackle, is the only player still on the Falcons team from that Super Bowl.
That was 6 years.
Well, no, I know 6 years. So that's what I'm saying. That there's such high turnover. So saying the guy that the Patriots drafted from 2017 still isn't on the team, I don't think that's very surprising. I'd be curious to see how many guys. I mean, 6 years in the NFL, that's a solid career.
Yeah. Okay. So their first, second, and one of their thirds from 2019 are no longer on the team. Right? The only guy from the 2019 draft that is still on the team that is not a special teamer, I want to say, is Damian Harris.
Yeah, but even then, during that time, and I'm just also trying to be devil's. I mean, like your points are valid, but during that time, though, if you're talking about, you said 2017 to 2019, you first, second, and third.
So 2020 was Kyle Duggar. He's still on the team. And then it was Josh Uche and Fernie Jennings. They're both still on the team. But then in the third round, you also drafted Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene. They're both cut. And everybody after them is cut. Except for actually, no, Jake Bailey was before that.
Yeah. But that goes to what I was saying. I mean, there's especially too, you guys during that time, you guys are picking late in the draft. You guys are picking in the high 20s. Essentially the second round. Like if those guys don't pan out, like that's why there's 7 rounds. That's why you pick 10 guys in a draft sometimes. Because like let's say you draft a corner in the first round. Well, maybe he doesn't pan out, but the guy in the 6th round all of a sudden pans out and he's a super hard worker. He fits into your system well, So just because the guys aren't still on the team from a couple of years ago draft I don't think that is that surprising. There's a lot of turnover in the NFL.
Yes, but at the rate that New England is doing that is much higher than the average team in the NFL.
So I would personally need to look into, because I'm just trying to use the Falcons as a reference point, and I'm trying to think
to put it in perspective. The only other team I can think of that has done a similar thing was the Raiders this year, but that was because Henry Ruggs, that whole situation happened. Then Damon Arnett went and flashed a gun on social media and had to go get like a mental health check. And then they cut another corner from their 2019 draft as well, or 2020 draft. I forget which one that was. Yeah. I think that was 2019. So like that's the only other rate of guys taken in the first 2 rounds that didn't make the team 2 or 3 years later that I can think of.
Yeah. So I mean, I would need to go back and look and see, but it's not. I mean, you have how many guys get drafted every single year? Is it
252 plus
252?
Yeah,
I think there's a bunch. There's a bunch of undrafted guys that then get signed. I mean, every year there's a class of probably 1,000 to 2,000 people that go to training camps and everything like that. Yeah. Actually, it might even be more than that, because there's probably 100 people you think at training camps at the start of training camps, maybe 90.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's 90. You have a 90-man training camp roster.
Yeah,
I want to
so there's 32 teams in. So then that right there, you're looking at close to 3,000 people vying for 53 jobs per team, and a lot of those jobs are already kind of like they're contracted in, so to say.
Yeah.
So just because you get drafted, you're a drafter, even in the late first round, no guarantee that you're going to pan out a couple years in. Like so that's what I'm saying. So just because they haven't drafted a Pro Bowler from 2011, I think on the flip side, then how many people were Pro Bowlers for like every year or close to every year from 2011? So there's already an elite class of players that are already in the Pro Bowl spot, and it's so hard to get above that. If that makes sense. Or sorry, it's so hard to take someone out of their Pro Bowl spot already.
Yeah, but I think it would be really interesting to do research on which teams have historically drafted better, which teams have historically drafted better, and we could base it off of how long the average player that they draft stays on their roster, and which team averages the most Pro Bowls. Pro Bowl players drafted and kind of do like a thing like that. One of the things I will say too is from like 2000 to 2010, Belichick drafted Pro Bowl players at like a 4 times higher than average rate from like 2000, 2010. And I think now it's like might be the law of averages possibly catching up with them.
Maybe. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a interesting debacle.
It's something. I mean, and you make some good points too. Something that I would definitely be interested in keeping an eye on and looking at, seeing how the Robert Kraft Bill Belichick relationship is. So to say.
And I think Bill has slightly lost that locker room already too. But the way he set up the team with there's no offensive coordinator, I don't think a lot of the guys like Matt Patricia and Bill keeps giving him responsibility.
Is there no offense? Is he the one calling? Who's calling plays?
Matt Patricia's calling the plays, but. So we don't have an offensive line coach. We have Matt Patricia, who is the offensive line coach and offensive assistant. But Matt Patricia is really the one calling the plays. Joe Judge is the quarterback's coach. And then we don't have a defensive coordinator either. We have Steve Belichick and Gerard Mayo, who alternate calling defensive plays. But that's what I mean. It's like this organization that prides itself on its structure and foundation has none right now. Like it's completely lost.
Well, and that stems from the owner and the GM, which is Bob Kraft and Bill Belichick, right? It isn't Belichick GM and head coach, right?
Yeah, he's GM and head coach. Robert Kraft does not make any personnel.
No. But I think he would want to be part of the conversations on how much we're going to pay these people, right? And like, if a coordinator is like, I want this much money, then
from what I understand, Bob Kraft is not really involved in that. It's all Belichick.
He just signs the check.
Yeah, he just signs the check. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's interesting.
But that's my biggest thing is like this organization is, for lack of a better term, a fucking mess. Like, and I think it's really starting to show on the field. And I think the relationship could spiral out of control if Robert Kraft decides to take GM duties away from Bill Belichick, and he'll just be like, no, like, not. It's like it's my way or the highway, because that's Bill Belichick's way.
Yeah.
So
that's fair. Yeah, you heard it here first.
Yeah. So I can't wait in like a year. Why I don't want Bill Belichick to get fired, but in like a year and a half, 2 years, like if this actually happens,
I'll say you were right. I mean, and absolutely, and that you called it. But I just think
I'd rather be wrong, and the Patriots are a playoff contender, though. That would be much better.
Well, yeah, I wish Kyle Shanahan ran the ball and kicked a field goal. So, not everything's perfect in this world.
Yeah. That's he didn't even have to run the ball. All he had to do was knee it 3 times.
Pretty much. But before we go, what were some of the comments that we had here? Someone told you to drink your tears.
Yeah, Raven187 said, where is it? Get a glass and drink them tears. I want to say he's also a Bills fan, if I remember right from his previous comments.
Raven187.
Yeah. he said, really, you can't count Cleveland time. But how many free agents did he resurrect careers of making Pro Bowl? Matthew Judon made the Pro Bowl last year.
That's a good point too, actually. Because if you're going based off just drafted, yeah.
I can't really think of any. They didn't have any in 2020. Tom Brady was their only Pro Bowler. Tom Brady and Matthew Slater were their only Pro Bowlers for 2019, 18, and 17. Because Matthew Slater is a perennial special teams Pro Bowler. And then Tom Brady's Tom Brady. So yeah,
you're telling me Cam Newton didn't make the Pro Bowl?
For the Patriots? Cam Newton couldn't even make the toilet bowl that year. It was so bad. I've never seen a quarterback look like he was going to throw the ball so far and then just chuck it 5 yards into the dirt. Like, that was the weirdest season.
I saw, it's funny you say that Geno Smith. I noticed Geno Smith did that. He's got a big, load up. And then I saw he short-armed a couple throws at Tyler Lockett.
I think it's some of the really muscly quarterbacks, I think they have a weird motion. And if they don't release the ball right, it just goes straight down.
Well, it's similar. I mean, to me, when I watch that, I like to golf. And to me, when I look at that, it's when those golfers who then don't transfer their weight, so if you're righty and you have all your weight on the right leg, and then they don't transfer the weight, and then you just arm it. And it just it's so inconsistent. That's what it looked. That's just what it looked. Also, I'm not a professional quarterback mechanic or golf coach, so it's but that's just what it looked like to me. When I was watching, that's just what it seemed like. You're short arming it, and so it's so much timing that goes on into that. But then you go look at someone like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, who is comfy there, and then they just had that quick explosion, and then it's a whip, and I think it's much more consistent.
I was looking at Josh Allen too on Thursday night, and he's a big dude, but he's not muscly. Cam Newton is jacked, and Geno Smith had some good muscle on his frame. But Josh Allen is just a big dude.
Well, so was Peyton Manning wasn't jacked at all. He was just a big dude. Ben Roethlisberger.
I was going to say Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah. They get mechanics, and then some people just can just have a cannon of an arm. So
yeah. Any other comments? It said Farm Boy. Anything else from the show? Is Byron Jones playing, or is he out for Miami? He started the season on injured reserve. I think he's eligible to come back at week 4, which means he can play in week 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chargers will be a better test to Allen. Chargers will be a better test. No Allen Hurts, but D should be hot. Think KC, but close 1-score game.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's going to be a great game. Won't be as good a game as Bills Kansas City was last year in the playoffs. I think that will be I should take that back. The Chargers and Chiefs had a great game, an overtime game in their second game last year. So, I mean, I just this division is going to be fun.
The Chargers and Chiefs, so Phillip Rivers last year with San Diego. I guess it wasn't San Diego. No, it wasn't LA. They played in the LA Galaxy Stadium. Sorry, that was my own little conversation. But his last year there, they won off a last-second touchdown pass to Mike Williams in Kansas City that year. So that's usually a good game. What else? Anything else?
Nothing from my end here.
No, I think that's about it.
So
all right, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you for tuning in. We do appreciate all the support that we can get. And we will be coming back on Monday to recap week 2. And you can watch the Sunday night game. You can watch the Monday night games with us on Monday. And then on Tuesday, we'll be back as well to talk about week 3 and kind of what we have going into that one. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.